If you're facing an imminent sleep deprivation challenge, such as a big deadline or an endurance event, what's the best way to prepare? With just 2 sleeps until I embark on a row around Britain, this is a question I'm interested in. One of the most sensitive ways to detect sleep deprivation is called the psychomotor vigilance test. You stare at a screen for 10 minutes, and as soon as numbers appear, you press a button as fast as you can. The smaller the numbers, the faster your reaction time, and the more alert you are. Hundreds of studies have shown that after a sleepless night, your reaction times get slower and you're more likely to make mistakes, either by getting a trigger-happy false positive or a slow lapse of over 500 milliseconds. So, can you train to adapt to short sleep? In this famous study, volunteers were divided into 4 groups: no sleep at all for 3 nights, or 4, 6 or 8 hours in bed for 14 nights. You can choose which is closest to your typical sleep pattern. Here's what happened to PVT errors over 2 weeks. As you can see, the groups with less time in bed made more mistakes. But more importantly, it's an upward trend. With every night of short sleep, the number of errors they made increased. This is what we call building up a sleep debt. Over 14 nights, there's no sign that these healthy young adults adapted to the short sleep. In fact, after 10 nights with just 6 hours of sleep, their alertness was equivalent to someone who hadn't slept at all for 24 hours. This argues against adopting short sleep patterns directly before a big event. You might feel more psychologically prepared, but the objective data suggests that your performance will suffer. What about getting extra sleep before a big event? In this study, volunteers were split into 2 groups. One group had their normal time in bed, and one group were asked to extend their time in bed to 10 hours for a week. Then, both groups came into the lab, where their sleep was restricted to just 3 hours for a week before they were allowed to recover. Here you can see that the group with extended sleep made fewer mistakes on the PVT task during the 7 nights of sleep deprivation, and they recovered more quickly. This seems to suggest that banking sleep by extending time in bed could make you more resilient to subsequent sleep loss. Another recent study in trained cyclists and triathletes found that extending their sleep for just 3 nights, from an average of 6.8 to 8.4 hours, led to a significant improvement in endurance performance. The jury is out on how much you need to extend sleep by to get a performance advantage. The reality is that few of us routinely get the recommended 7 to 9 hours sleep, so there's a question about whether this extended sleep is really extra or just actually repaying an existing sleep debt. Regardless of the reasons, the evidence does seem to suggest that making a conscious effort to get to bed early in the nights leading up to a big event could give you a performance advantage, especially if you know that nerves mean you're likely to get a short night of sleep the night before you start. I'm going to be honest, I've been so disorganised this week that I've been getting to bed later than I've intended, but fortunately there are a few other things you can do to help prepare for a big event. On the first night in a new location, your brain tends to stay extra vigilant and sleep is lighter. So I'll be arriving at the boat 1 night in advance so that I can acclimatise. I've also started to use an eye mask and earplugs, and I'll be using my sleeping bag from tonight so that everything feels more familiar. Finally, a massive thank you to everyone who's donated to the British Heart Foundation this week. Every donation makes my heart sing. Thanks for listening and sleep well.